Thanks for the intro. Yeah, before I moved over to the dark side, should we say. I was a retailer for over 30 years, and joined a business in CollectPlus that was built essentially around a very distinctive customer proposition, a customer service model, and taking on the chief commercial officer's role at Yodel about a year ago. Really starting to look at how we take a business that was very much market following, how do we get it to work more closely with a business that was very customer oriented to create a new kind of proposition in the marketplace has been something that I think I've been grappling with over the course of the last year. So, and that provides the foundation in some ways for what we're going to talk about for the next 20-25 minutes or so. So I won't dwell on the agenda, but really what we're sort of looking at here is how we start to use customer influence and customer insight to start to drive differentiation in the final mile. And the first section of this is really about how we use customer insight, or how we're starting to use customer insight to drive some of our development agenda. So we have within Yodel quite an interesting database. We have a final mile capability where we are delivering to customers and actually starting to get feedback from customers, or have been for a number of years, getting feedback from customers in a very structured kind of way. And something that we've really built on over the course of probably a period of about 5 years now. It's very easy to cop out in this environment and think as yourself in some ways as a silent facilitator or a passive brand ingredient to the retail brands that you're working with, and deferring as a consequence any issues back to the retailer for guidance, and therefore just focusing on delivering the item. But since 2013, Yodel have had this capability of actually taking insights and information from consumers, and they are always listening as a consequence. What we've done over the course of the last year and a half is really start to take that information. So we've got a database of 6 million responses over that 5-year period. We're getting something of the order of 7,000 pieces of customer insight a day that really allows us to start to drive our development agenda. When you couple that with CollectPlus, CollectPlus has always taken a degree of insight from the consumer. CollectPlus takes feedback on what is probably the most uncontrollable part of the CollectPlus customer journey, the in-store experience. So across our in excess of 7,000 stores, we've got something of the order of 50,000 agents who are interacting with a customer on a day-to-day basis. And it's very difficult for us to control that element because of the very nature of independent retail. And the thing that strikes us is that if you have a bad experience in a CollectPlus location, you're probably not going to come back, certainly to that location again, and potentially not to the brand again. And so, as with the Have Your Say survey, we believe that the very high number of responses that we get is really driven by the timing of the question that we ask. And so it's absolutely immediate. As soon as the customer has been into one of our locations and asked and collected an item, we get an instant feedback from the consumer on what that in-store experience was like. And therefore we're actually serving the customer feedback in a very timely manner. Sometimes it means we get the feedback in a fairly abrupt way. It's pretty raw, pretty brutal. But we're more likely to find out the truth as a consequence. But we then use the data that we get to refine the service, and importantly to manage the quality of the network. So we continually churn the stores within our network to ensure that where customers are telling us about poorer experience, we're actually changing that experience and improving it as we go. The next section is really about social media, and social media is something that the CollectPlus brand particularly have been involved in for some time. I think, if I reflect on my own sort of history, I suppose I'd call myself a reasonably early adopter of different social media tools, but I was quite tentative about using social media within a business environment to talk to customers. We've all seen the rants on Twitter and the stories, the long letters that you can see sometimes on Facebook about the experience that consumers have. However, because CollectPlus was always focused on being driven by the customer, and continually improving the business from that feedback, it seemed absolutely impossible to me that we could avoid the social dialogue that was going on, but also the complexity that comes with that and the richness of the content. So when a new client comes on board with CollectPlus, We can immediately let our loyal and target audience know through the channels that they're used to that brand has come on board, and how they're going to transact with us, and how we're going to present new service offerings for the retailer. This is he said flicking on. This is the start of a promotion that we ran with the boutique fashion brand Atterley, who were extremely delighted with the organic reach that we received and the positive sentiment that it created for them. And we used social amplification techniques to enhance reach. So whilst on the surface, the numbers would suggest that there isn't that much transactional activity going on, the frequency of interaction that we have with our customer base and the amplification that we get is really key to the way in which these things really play out. What we do see is much higher engagement rates than our media partner, Mediacom, would normally see from these kind of things, because we're talking to consumers very directly about the brands that they like and about the way in which they're shopping. And therefore our commitment as a partner in this space is about the way in which we evolve and improve our role as an ingredient to the retail proposition through the way in which we amplify their brand through social campaign. Social also helps us to empathise with the consumer. So you'll all be very familiar with the House of Fraser situation that arose a few weeks ago. House of Fraser stores, as it was a very large client of ours, both with Yodel and with CollectPlus. And our refund or return methodology was very popular with House of Fraser customers. Before the full details of the administration played out, we had well in excess of 5,000 returns from customers sitting within our CollectPlus points on their way back to the retailer. They then unfortunately sat in trailers because the House of Fraser stores warehouse was closed by the administrators and couldn't transact. Customers started to see and started to talk to us about that situation. We were in quite an interesting situation where the administrator was starting to tell us that inventory belonged to them. The reality was, and in our belief, the inventory still belonged to the customer. And we took the decision, following dialogue with our customer through social channels, to return all of those goods to the consumer at our cost, to ensure that their value was retained and the value of the House of Fraser customer was hopefully transferred to the new owning business. A decision that we took solely because of the interactions that we had with the customers through social media. So how can we share that kind of insight that we get, and how can we add value to the relationships that we're building? This chart actually shows that estimated delivery time was a key feature that customers were asking us for as we developed our delivery proposition. Through the Have Your Say survey and through our customer service listening capabilities through our contact centre, we were starting to understand what customers really wanted from a modern delivery service. We've been trialling 2-hour delivery, not trialling, we've actually been rolling out 2-hour delivery services and monitoring the feedback on those through the Have Your Say service. So we can now see the Net Promoter Score from customers is much higher for parcels delivered on our 2-hour Expect service than from our standard service. And what we've also seen is that the clients who use those services are seeing their Net Promoter Scores increase as a consequence as well. The other thing that it tells us is that we need to refine our services over time. Our service level agreement for a flowers client was actually on the surface great, but sentiment wasn't. The challenge that we had was that what we were doing, we were actually delivering to customers in line with the contract that we had, with the delivery proposition that we'd agreed, but unfortunately that wasn't in line with the customer expectation. Certainly for a quite emotive sale like a bunch of flowers, a delivery 7 AM to 7 PM was probably the wrong proposition. But that's what the client was buying from us. What we did is listening to customers, we changed that proposition to the consumer and introduced a 2 PM cutoff. For the simple reason that on Mother's Day, if you give your mum flowers at 7 o'clock in the evening, it's an afterthought, it's not a gift. And as a consequence, we've been refining our proposition and working with our retail clients to build the kind of things that customers really want from these new services. The other thing that's important to us is the concept of what the guys in the CollectPlus business call #nofilter. So whilst we are absolutely delighted and very proud of our excellence score on Trustpilot, with over 84% of feedback given as 5-star reviews. It's actually the 1 and 2-star reviews that are the most important to us, and the ones that really make the investment in our Trustpilot relationship absolutely worthwhile. They form a very big part of our client reviews, the way in which we discuss our ratings and our performance with our partners. And customers absolutely appreciate the transparency of the ratings and the way in which that we respond to them, particularly in terms of those 1 and 2-star ratings. So how can we then take that kind of feedback and make sound business decisions that sit behind them? We'll go back to the 2-hour time window piece. When we were originally looking at what time window we provided for customers, we could have followed the market. The market was starting to move to a single-hour time slot. And so what we did, we went out and asked customers what they really wanted and what was important to them. It was overwhelming, as you can see from the chart, that what customers wanted was a 2-hour window, not a 1-hour window, because they believed that a 1-hour window had a high degree of failure associated with it. And so the feedback that we got was 2 hours is enough at this point in time. We continue to listen and we continue to engage in a dialogue with retail consumers, and that is still the position now. We will see that will evolve over time and it will become tighter. But the point is, what we're doing is we're actually responding to the customer need today and making sure that what we are doing is in line. And 47,000 responses that we got to this single question was more than enough for us to work out which delivery window was the right thing and to create an affordable time offering. What we also did, as part and parcel of the same listening exercise, is that we started to look at the whole end-to-end journey. So whilst in CollectPlus we've got a significant proportion of the UK returns market, for some customers, the convenience of CollectPlus isn't enough. They actually want collection from home. And what the consumers were telling us was that the reliability of home collection was poor, and we needed to improve it, or the market needed to improve. So as a consequence, we introduced Expect Returns. So using our 2-hour window delivery capability, we introduced a 2-hour returns capability because that's what customers were telling us that they wanted. So using the same kind of insight that we had from Expect, we built a returns product. So far, the product's an absolute winner, and we will refine it over the course of the next few years, again, using the Have Your Say customer feedback. This slide talks about InFlight. So back at the start of this year, a lot of our clients, or the retail partners that we work with, were telling us that InFlight diversion was something that Yodel didn't have a strong competence in, but we needed to build it. So rather than just mimic the market, what we decided to do was go and talk to customers again and really start to understand what InFlight services were the ones that were required and in what order we should develop and deliver them. So we've developed a range of InFlight services in terms of the ability for a consumer to redirect a parcel in transit to them. And the most important things for them were Safe Place, Nature, Leave with Neighbour, Change of Day were the first ones that we developed and the first ones we launched and trialled with a number of clients. We're now using that customer feedback for the next wave and starting to build and measure the impact on client NPS through the rollout of the capability. And what we are seeing, as this chart shows, that where we've actually introduced our in-flight services, we are getting an improvement in client feedback and satisfaction scores across a range, although the strongest ones are positive feedback around our tracking, our communication, and our driver attitude that comes with all of those new delivery services. And we get, through the Have Your Say survey, a host of verbatim comments. I think we'll probably make all of this available to the delegates afterwards. But so I'm not going to dwell on this slide. But the richness that we get as a consequence of this continual dialogue and this continual listening, enrich the way in which we develop product in the market at the moment. One of the things that customers have been saying to us is that retail has been let's call it a 7-day sport for over 20 years in the UK, and unfortunately home delivery isn't broadly a 7-day sport at the moment. So we will be launching a 7-day product in the spring of next year. I'm not going to tell you what it'll look like at this point in time, because we're still listening to customers, and we will build something that actually works for customers rather than works for us as a delivery organisation. It's about making sure that that 7th day is really used in a way that the consumer, or presented in a way that the consumer will adopt it, and build it as part and parcel of their regular shopping routines. The other thing that we do, and this one is through CollectPlus, is through one of the surveys that we did, we understood that particularly young female consumers increasingly do not have a printer at home. So the ability to print a CollectPlus returns label was a limiting factor for them in terms of using our service. So with that feedback, we went and developed a product that allowed us to print a label in store directly. So we'd interact with the consumer over our website, particularly through a mobile device, allow the customer to go into store, and we would print their label in store. What we then did as a further development, we actually built that as an Alexa skill. So hopefully there's a little video now that shows you how that works. Hopefully.
You can now return your order via our new Alexa app. Once it's installed, simply say the retailer you'd like to return your purchase to. Alexa, open CollectPlus.
Welcome to CollectPlus. Say return parcel to begin.
Return parcel.
Okay, which retailer are you returning to?
Very.
You would like to return to Very, is that correct?
Yes.
I'll be sending a barcode to your email shortly. Ask the store to scan it and they will print your returns label for your parcel. Thanks for using CollectPlus. Goodbye.
And there it is. Just take your parcel and barcode to any one of the 7,000 CollectPlus stores across the UK. Print your label in store and pop it on. You're all done.
Whoop. So $64,000 question. Does this make sense for the business? Does this actually generate a return on investment? So I suppose the question we ask ourselves is, what impact has Have Your Say and the CollectPlus listening program had on the business, both today and in the future? So we're now gathering insight and feedback on thousands of delivery experiences every day. And with over 6 million responses to date, we've got a fantastic database that allows us to develop insight on our current proposition, but more importantly on the way in which we build that going forward. And the way in which we enhance the Have Your Say program is really important in doing that. Putting the voice of the customer very much at the heart of the business so far has driven a 13-point improvement in customer NPS and a 5% in customer satisfaction ratings over the course of the last 3 years. And there is a very, very live target within the business to improve that further. Over 300 of our clients now have Your Say dashboards, so we actually share this insight back with our retail partners, and are using that insight as a differentiator in terms of the way in which they join up their whole proposition from end to end, and how we actually have built additional and significant new business over the course of the last 6 months. Finally, we've also seen a significant increase in client Net Promoter Score over the course of the last 3 years. So the way in which our clients, our partners rate us as an organisation. And that's been driven by improvements in service, improvements in customer satisfaction, as well as building stronger, tighter relationships with the retailers based around a common dialogue around the service to their end consumer and the way in which we play our role as an ingredient to their overall brand. All of which has been enhanced and has been enabled by the surveys that we do and the surveys that we run. In terms of wider benefits, our new product development team have found the Have Your Say surveys invaluable for identifying which areas to focus on, in which order, and how to build business cases for investment. For example, as I explained earlier, it's been used in the development of our 2-hour delivery window, both for outbound and for our return services, for our InFlight diversion features, which are currently being rolled out, and are going to be rolled out to the market with some strength over the course of the next few weeks. Through the surveys, we can measure the impact on clients moving on to these services and prove that they do absolutely result in higher customer satisfaction for them and higher Net Promoter Scores. And it actually allows our commercial teams to have a more future-looking dialogue with our more forward-looking partners. The other thing is that we seek external validation of this. You could argue that a lot of this feedback is just a sunk cost with no real return on investment within the business. And as customers, we all operate as customers on a day-to-day basis. We've all answered feedback and really think, well, does anybody really listen to this stuff? Well, we do. We absolutely do. And what it is doing, it's actually changing the way in which we structure our business. We've made this feedback a valuable part of a client's review. We've made this feedback a really important part of the way in which we develop our business. We can share what's been said, both in a generic sense across sectors, but also more specifically about that client brand. This can sometimes, and has proven to be, really eye-opening for the retailer. And it can help us to develop shared objectives on which to work over the course of the next review period. We absolutely believe that we are starting to deliver the promise of the retailer within the final mile now, and that's for a brand that in some ways has gone through a bit of a lull in recent years. From a client research perspective, we then get feedback from over 100 of our retail partners twice a year to understand what we're doing well and whether or not the things that we're building from our customer feedback are actually developing the right kind of relationships and the way in which we're building our proposition going forward. So as a final summary, I think the thing that I'd always revert back to is that with all of the technical and digital development that's going on in our space at the moment, there is one absolute truth that's really important for me. Roger Staubach, formerly of the Dallas Cowboys, said a number of years ago, there are no traffic jams along the extra mile. And therefore, those organisations who do that little bit extra for their customers, listening to them, being really attentive, listening to their colleagues, listening to their clients, are the ones that will survive and will win out in the new economy. Thanks very much, and keep listening.